No matter what happened, it was always my fault. He'd twist every argument until I was apologizing. That's deflection, a way to avoid responsibility. Here's how I finally stopped taking the blame. We were standing in the kitchen. I'd asked him a simple question. Where were you tonight? You said you'd be home by 8. It was midnight. My voice was calm. I wasn't yelling. I just wanted to know. And then I watched it happen. His face changed, not gradually, instantly, like someone flipped a switch inside him. 1 second, he was defensive, eyes darting. The next, his shoulders slumped forward. His voice went soft, wounded. He looked at the floor and said, I guess I just can't do anything right for you. I felt my chest tighten. Wait, what just happened? I was the one asking a reasonable question, but somehow, in the space of 10 seconds, I became the bad guy. I was the one who made him feel small. I was the aggressor, and I apologized. I actually apologized for asking where he was. That moment broke something open in me, because it wasn't the first time. It was the 100th time, maybe the 1000th. Every single conversation we had that involved accountability ended the same way. I'd bring up something he did. He'd turn it around. And I'd end up comforting him for the pain I caused by simply asking a question. No matter what happened, it was always my fault. He'd twist every argument until I was apologizing. That's deflection, a way to avoid responsibility. Here's how I finally stopped taking the blame. By the end of this, you're going to see exactly how this pattern operates, why it works so well, and what you can do to protect yourself without losing your mind in the process. It started small. We'd been together for 6 months. I noticed he had a way of never quite answering direct questions. I'd ask, "Did you call your mom back like you said you would?" And he'd respond, "Why are you always checking up on me? Do you not trust me?" I'd feel this jolt of confusion. I wasn't checking up. I was just asking. But suddenly I was on trial for being controlling. Or I'd say, "Hey, you promised we'd go to my friend's dinner tonight. You forgot, didn't you?" And he'd look hurt, genuinely hurt. "I've been working so hard all week. I thought you'd understand. But I guess my effort doesn't matter to you." And just like that, the issue shifted. It wasn't about him breaking a promise. It was about me being unsupportive, ungrateful, cold. I started keeping mental notes because I felt like I was losing the thread of reality. Did I actually say something cruel? Was I being unreasonable? I'd replay the conversations in my head, trying to figure out where I went wrong. I couldn't find it because I hadn't gone wrong. I was dealing with someone who couldn't tolerate the feeling of being at fault, not even for a second. And when that feeling came up, when reality tapped him on the shoulder and said, "Hey, you messed up," he had a reflex. He deflected. Deflection isn't just dodging responsibility. It's what happens when someone feels the rising heat of shame and immediately redirects it outward, onto you, so they don't have to feel it themselves. Picture this. Inside him, there's a structure. It looks strong on the outside. Confidence, charm, certainty. But underneath, it's held together by one rule. I am not flawed. I am not wrong. I am not less than. When you point out something he did, something objectively true, like he forgot your birthday or he snapped at you in front of friends, that structure gets threatened. The truth starts to seep in. And for a split second, he feels it. Shame. But he can't hold it. He doesn't have the internal tools to say, "Yeah, I messed up. I'm sorry." Because admitting fault feels, to him, like total collapse. So instead, he takes that shame, that uncomfortable feeling, and he throws it at you. It's like he's vomiting something toxic inside himself directly onto you. He feels something he can't manage, and rather than process it, he makes it your problem. If he feels insecure, he accuses you of being insecure. If he's lying, he accuses you of lying. If he feels inadequate, he tells you you're never satisfied. And here's the cruelest part. It works because you're a person with empathy. You're someone who self-reflects. So when he accuses you of something, you actually stop and think, wait, am I being controlling? Am I too critical? Maybe I am the problem. You take the blame he couldn't carry, and he walks away clean. Let me give you a specific example. One night, I found a message on his phone. I wasn't snooping. It was sitting on the counter, screen up, and the notification popped up while I was standing right there. It was from a woman I didn't know. The message said, "Last night was fun. Let's do it again soon." My stomach dropped. When he came back into the room, I said, "Who's this?" I showed him the screen. He didn't even blink. He looked at me like I'd just committed a crime. "You're going through my phone now?" I wasn't going through your phone. It was right there. The notification came up. Who is she? This is unbelievable. You don't trust me at all, do you? I'm asking you a simple question. No, you're accusing me. You're always accusing me. I can't even have friends without you making it into something it's not. This is why I don't tell you things, because you twist everything. And then he sat down on the couch and put his head in his hands. He said, "I don't know if I can do this anymore. I feel like I'm walking on eggshells around you." I stood there, holding his phone, looking at a message from another woman, and somehow I was the villain. I apologized. Again, I said, "I didn't mean to accuse you. I was just surprised. I'm sorry." He looked up at me with this wounded expression and said, "I just need you to trust me." And I believed him. That's deflection in its purest form. He took my legitimate concern, a message that was at minimum suspicious, and turned it into evidence of my dysfunction. I became controlling, paranoid, jealous, and he became the victim of my irrational behavior. He denied the implication, didn't address the woman, didn't explain. Then he attacked me, flipped the focus onto my supposed invasion of privacy, my lack of trust, my pattern of twisting things. Then he reversed the roles. Suddenly, he was the injured party. I was the one hurting him, and because I didn't know what this pattern was, I fell for it every single time. Anytime I brought up something that made him look bad, he had a rotation of responses. Sometimes he'd go into what I call the victim slump. His whole body language would change, shoulders forward, head down, voice quiet. I guess I'm just a terrible person. I guess I can't do anything right. Maybe you'd be better off without me. It's such a manipulative move because it's so effective. You go from holding him accountable to comforting him. You go from, "You hurt me," to, no, you're not terrible. I didn't mean it that way. He's not apologizing. He's not acknowledging what he did. He's making you feel guilty for bringing it up. Other times, he'd use the joke defense. He'd say something cutting, like, "You're so dramatic. It's exhausting." And when I'd react, he'd laugh. I was kidding. God, you can't take a joke. Why are you so sensitive? Now I'm not only hurt, I'm also uptight, humorless, the problem. And sometimes he'd just get angry, cold, controlled. "I'm not doing this with you right now. You always do this. You always start fights." I wasn't starting fights. I was trying to have conversations. But in his version of reality, any attempt to address his behavior was an attack. I started to believe it. I think maybe I'm too sensitive. Maybe I do start fights. Maybe I'm remembering things wrong. I second-guessed every instinct I had. I'd replay conversations obsessively, trying to figure out if I was the problem. I'd ask friends, "Was I wrong to bring that up?" And they'd look at me, confused. "You asked where he was. That's not wrong. Why are you questioning yourself?" But I couldn't stop, because when you live with someone who deflects every issue, back onto you, your sense of reality starts to erode. You lose trust in your own perceptions. This is what deflection does. It doesn't just avoid accountability. It rewrites the story so thoroughly that you become the antagonist in your own life. Let me tell you about the night things escalated. We were supposed to go to my sister's wedding. He'd known about it for 6 months. On the day of the wedding, he didn't come home. I called him twice. No answer. I texted. Nothing. I went to the wedding alone. I made excuses for him. I smiled through the whole thing, but inside, I felt humiliated. He came home at 2 a.m. I was still awake. I said, "Where were you?" He looked at me like I was insane. I was out. You missed my sister's wedding. I didn't miss it. I chose not to go. There's a difference. I felt my hands start to shake. You chose not to go without telling me, without even letting me know you were okay. I don't have to report to you like a child. This isn't about reporting. This is about respect. This is about showing up for something that mattered to me. And then he exploded. His voice rose. His face twisted. You know what? I'm tired of this. I'm tired of you acting like I owe you every second of my time. I'm tired of feeling suffocated. Maybe I didn't go because I needed space. Maybe I needed one night where I wasn't under your microscope. I stood there, stunned. I wasn't asking for every second of his time. I was asking him to show up to my sister's wedding. But he turned it into me being suffocating, controlling, the reason he needed space. And then he left. I walked out, slammed the door. I sat on the couch and cried, not because I thought I was wrong, but because I didn't know how to fight someone who could rewrite reality so quickly. That was the night I started researching. I typed into the search bar, "Why does my partner always turn things around on me?" And the results that came back changed everything. I read about how certain people cannot tolerate the internal experience of being flawed, how they have a reflex that immediately externalizes discomfort, how they convert shame into rage, because rage is a defense mechanism that silences the other person and restores their sense of control. I read about how this throwing of discomfort works, how if they feel guilty about something, they accuse you of it. If they feel insecure, they call you insecure. It's automatic. It's how they regulate themselves without ever taking responsibility. I read about the victim-bully switch, how they can go from aggressive to pathetic in seconds, depending on what gets them out of accountability, how they learn that if they cry or collapse into self-pity, you'll stop pushing. And if that doesn't work, they'll escalate into anger until you back down. And I read about something that saved me, soul distancing. Soul distancing is different from just detaching emotionally. It's a specific practice. Before you interact with someone who deflects, you imagine taking your soul, your authentic self, your dreams, your vulnerabilities, the parts of you that are tender, and you place them in a safe box. You visualize putting that box somewhere outside the room, somewhere they can't reach. Then you go into the interaction. You're physically present. You're functional. But your spirit isn't available to be hurt. It sounds simple, but it's powerful, because what deflection relies on is your openness, your willingness to self-reflect, your empathy. When you make those parts of yourself unavailable during interactions with someone who will weaponize them, they lose their power over you. You're not giving them your good news because they'll minimize it or become envious. You're not giving them your bad news because they'll use it against you. You're giving them neutral information, the weather, traffic, surface-level observations. You're keeping the lines of communication open so they don't punish you with silence or rage, but you're not exposing your inner self to harm. I started practicing this. The next time he came home late, I didn't ask where he was. I said, "Traffic was bad today." Neutral, indifferent. He looked at me, almost confused, like he was waiting for me to challenge him so he could deflect, but I didn't give him the opening. When he tried to start an argument, you seemed upset. I didn't take the bait. I said, "I'm fine, just tired." He pushed, "You're always fine. You never actually talked to me." I didn't defend myself. I didn't explain. I just said, "I'm going to bed. Good night." I walked away, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Control, not over him, over myself. Soul distancing is not a solution to fix the relationship. It's not a strategy to make them change. It's a survival tool. It's what you use when you're still in the situation and you need to protect yourself. Because here's the truth. You cannot call them out. I know you want to. I wanted to. I wanted to sit him down and say, "You deflect. Every time I bring up something you did, you turn it around on me. You make me feel crazy. I know what you're doing, but that doesn't work because deflection isn't a conscious choice they're making. It's a reflex. And if you confront them directly, you're just triggering the exact mechanism you're trying to expose. They'll deny it. They'll attack you for psychoanalyzing them. They'll reverse the roles and claim you're the one who never takes responsibility. You can't win that fight because the fight itself is the deflection. So here's what you do instead. Stop sharing what matters. I know that sounds harsh, but it's strategic protection. There are 3 categories of information: good news, bad news, indifferent news. Good news, don't share it. If you get a promotion, if you're excited about something, tell someone safe, not them, because they will minimize it or make it about themselves. When I told him I got accepted into a program I'd been working toward for months, his response was, "Must be nice to have that kind of free time." That was it. No congratulations, just resentment. After that, I stopped sharing wins with him. I'd call my best friend instead. I'd celebrate with people who could actually be happy for me, and it felt like breathing again. Bad news, don't share it. If you're struggling, if you're scared, if you need comfort, do not go to them. They will not give you what you need. When my dad got sick, I made the mistake of crying in front of him. I needed support. Instead, he sighed and said, "This is really stressful for me too, you know. Your mood has been really hard to deal with." I was stunned. My dad was in the hospital, and he was complaining about my mood. That's when I realized he couldn't hold space for my pain. He could only see how it affected him. So I stopped. Going to him for comfort. Indifferent news, share it freely. Talk about the weather. Talk about traffic. Keep the lines of communication open with surface-level content so they don't escalate or withdraw, but don't give them access to your inner world. I'd come home and say, "The grocery store was packed today," or "I saw a dog that looked just like the one from that movie." Neutral, boring, safe, and it worked. It kept him from accusing me of shutting him out, but it also kept me from giving him anything he could twist. This isn't intimacy, but you're not in an intimate relationship. You're in a relationship with someone who uses your vulnerability as ammunition. So stop handing them bullets. The next thing you need to do is practice radical acceptance. This is the hardest part. You have to accept that they are not going to change. Not because you didn't explain it well enough. Not because you didn't give them enough chances. They're not going to change because they don't see themselves. Clearly, they don't have the internal capacity to sit with the discomfort of being flawed, and you cannot give that to someone. So you accept that this is who they are. You stop hoping for the apology that never comes. You stop waiting for them to suddenly see your perspective. They won't. And accepting that doesn't mean you're giving up on yourself. It means you're seeing reality clearly. And once you see reality clearly, you can make decisions based on truth instead of hope. I spent months hoping he'd wake up one day and realize what he was doing. I thought if I could just be patient enough, kind enough, clear enough, he'd have a breakthrough. He didn't. And the day I accepted that, really accepted it, everything shifted. I stopped waiting. I stopped hoping. I started planning my exit. The third thing you need to do is document. I'm saying this because deflection makes you doubt yourself. And when you doubt yourself, you stay longer than you should. Keep a record. When something happens that feels wrong, write it down. Date it. What happened? What was said? Because 3 weeks from now, when they tell you that never happened, or you're remembering it wrong, you'll have a record. Not to show them, to prove it to yourself, so you don't gaslight yourself on their behalf. I started keeping notes on my phone, just short entries. Today, he promised to pick me up from work. He didn't show. When I called, he said he never promised that. Or he yelled at me for leaving dishes in the sink. I apologized. 2 days later, he left dishes in the sink. When I mentioned it, he said I was being petty. Reading those notes back was like seeing the pattern in high definition. I couldn't deny it anymore. The evidence was right there. The fourth thing you need to do is stop apologizing for things you didn't do. This is a habit you've learned. When they deflect, when they turn it around, you apologize. Because it's easier. Because it stops the fight. You're not wrong. And every time you apologize for something you didn't do, you're reinforcing the pattern. You're teaching them that deflection works. Stop. The next time they deflect, don't apologize. Don't defend. Don't explain. Just say, I see it differently, and walk away. You don't need their agreement. Your reality is valid because you experienced it. The first time I did this, it felt terrifying. He accused me of being cold, of shutting down, and I didn't argue. I just said, I see it differently, and left the room. He followed me. He escalated. I didn't respond. And eventually, he gave up. It didn't fix anything, but it stopped me from taking blame that wasn't mine. The fifth and most important thing you need to do is build your exit. I'm not saying leave tomorrow, but I am telling you to prepare, because soul distancing is a bridge. It's what you do to survive while you figure out your next move. But it's not a permanent state. You can't live the rest of your life with your soul in a box. So start building your exit quietly. Talk to people you trust. Start saving money. Find a therapist who understands this dynamic. Look at apartments. Open a separate bank account. Make copies of important documents. Plan. And when you're ready, when you've built enough strength and clarity, you leave. Not because you're weak, but because you finally saw the pattern for what it was, and you chose yourself. Here's what I wish someone had told me earlier. Deflection isn't about you. I know it feels personal. I know it feels like if you were just better, smarter, calmer, they wouldn't do this. But that's not true. They deflect because they can't handle shame. Not because you're causing shame, because shame exists, because reality exists, because they did something wrong and their psyche can't integrate that fact. You could be perfect. You could never challenge them, never question them, and they'd still deflect, because deflection isn't a response to your behavior. It's a response to their own internal fragility. You are not responsible for managing their emotions. You are not responsible for making them feel good about themselves. You are not responsible for carrying the shame they refuse to hold. You're only responsible for protecting yourself. I left. It took me 8 months after that night in the kitchen, but I left. And I'm not going to lie to you and say it was easy. It wasn't. There were moments I doubted myself, moments I thought maybe I was overreacting. But every time I felt myself slipping, I'd look at my notes. I'd read what I'd written. I'd see the pattern in black and white. And I'd remember that I wasn't crazy. I wasn't too sensitive. He was deflecting. And I was finally strong enough to stop catching what he threw. If you're watching this and you recognize yourself in this story, I need you to hear this. You're not imagining it. You're not overreacting. You're not too much or too difficult. You're in a relationship with someone who cannot take responsibility. And that's not something you can fix. That's not something love can overcome. All you can do is see it clearly. Protect yourself while you're still in it and plan your way out, because you deserve to be with someone who can say, I messed up. I'm sorry. I'll do better. You deserve to be with someone who doesn't turn every conversation into a blame game. You deserve to be with someone who can hold their own shame. And until you find that person, or until you find peace in being alone, practice soul distancing. Keep your inner world safe. Share only what's neutral. Stop apologizing for things you didn't do. Document the truth and build your exit. You don't owe them access to your soul. You don't owe them one more chance. You don't owe them an explanation. You only owe yourself clarity, protection, and eventually freedom. Listen, I know this is heavy. I know if you're watching this, you're probably in the thick of it right now. Maybe you're sitting there replaying a conversation from last night, wondering if you were the one who messed up. Maybe you're exhausted from apologizing for things you didn't do. You're not alone, and you're not crazy. What you're experiencing is real. The confusion is real. The exhaustion is real. And the fact that you're here watching this, searching for answers, that tells me you're strong. So start small. You don't have to leave today. Just start protecting yourself. Practice soul distancing. Stop sharing your good news and your bad news with someone who can't hold it safely. Document what's happening so you can trust your own memory. And start building your exit, even if it's just opening a separate bank account or talking to one trusted friend. You deserve peace. You deserve a relationship where you're not constantly defending your reality. You deserve someone who can take responsibility without turning it into your fault. And if that's not what you have right now, that's okay. You can get there, one step at a time. If this resonated with you, hit that subscribe button. Not for me, but for you. Because I'm going to keep making content that helps you see these patterns clearly, that gives you the tools to protect yourself, and that reminds you that you're not alone. And hit the like button too, because it helps this video reach other people who need to hear it. People who are sitting in their kitchens right now, wondering if they're the problem. Let's make sure they find this. You've got this. I promise. You're stronger than you think. And you're already on your way out. Keep going.